Salutations, everyone. Welcome back to Total Warhammer 3. I'm Lord Forrend, and today we've got a guide on the Cults of Sigmar, Volkmar the Grim. So this is going to focus on Volkmar, his unique technologies, building, starting situation. It is not a general faction guide. Those are in the rest of the playlist and the larger Total Warhammer guide series I've been doing. So if you're looking for that, go check out those videos. For those of you here for Volkmar the Grim, and you enjoy this video, like, comment, subscribe, that great stuff, and we will get started immediately. So, Volkmar the Grim has left the Empire, and he is down here in the Great Desert of Araby region. Think Arabia. Now, Volkmar the Grim has only 2 unique technologies, so we'll start there. He has access to the Fanatic's Decree. Flagellant units have 50% upkeep, speed, and missile resistance. This is extremely useful because Volkmar has other abilities that boost Flagellant units. Unfortunately, Flagellants aren't the world best, but this makes them much more usable for your faction. Now, Divine Mandate really helps because it will allow a greater effect range for your battle prayers. Grand Hammer of Sigmar and Shield of Faith, both of which you will want to use a lot. You are going to be fighting a lot of factions. You have really no particular allies in the area. The closest might be Rapunzel up here in the north if she survives. Other than that, you're going to be fighting Lizardmen, Greenskin, Khorne, Vampires, Tomb Kings, etc. It is a real mosh pit of enemies fighting to the death down here. So, the Grand Cult of Sigmar is part of the general hunt for the Books of Nagash mini quest that several factions have. So your job is to capture the Books of Nagash. Now, unlike the other factions, you're not going to use it, you're going to lock them away. So if you gain possessions of the Books of Nagash, you gain various bonuses for taking them. And as you build up Righteous Zeal, you unlock ancillaries and electric count state troops. This will be amazingly useful, as well as decreasing the cost of your elector count state troop units. And if you get it all the way, you get ward save. The idea here is as the game goes on, you want to start using more elector count state troops than your normal troops. I found, however, you don't get enough of them, so you might have just maybe 1 or 2 armies of really elite troops, dirt cheap army though, and then everywhere else you'll have to supplement with other troops. I'm not going to go really into the various books here, but suffice to say, this is the only one that you might be able to pick up early game. You have to fight a battle against a roaming army, which is very strong, but if you bring 2 armies, it's possible you take them out early. The problem is all the other ones. You've got one over here in southern Lustria. You've got a couple over here in Lamia and up north in Karak 8 Peaks. Now, be aware if you start expanding in those areas, you're going to be fighting dwarves and stuff. Out of all the factions in the game, this is one of the factions that has to go the farthest distance to accomplish its objectives. In fact, you have to go all the way up here to Skaven Blight, or even further up here into the middle of the ocean to get the land you need. You even have to take White Tower of Hoeth if you want to unite all of them, which of course will annoy all the High Elves, assuming Marathi hasn't killed them. Now, thankfully, you don't need to get all of them to win as this faction. To win a short victory, you just have to destroy the main Zeech faction as well as Manfred's Drakenhof Conclave, which is right over there. And in fact, in the first 20 turns or 2, either you or the Drakenhof Conclave are likely to die fighting each other. Further on, though, if you want to get a long victory, again, you don't need the Books of Nagash. I want to make that clear. You don't need to gather the Books of Nagash, but you get bonuses if you do. This one involves defending the Empire. Now, that means you have to go all the way back to the Empire, or an Empire faction has to win, and you have to ally them. Honestly, though, this is one of the worst long campaign victories I can think of in the Total Warhammer 3 game, because you're so far away from it, and you don't get an easy access or teleport back and forth between the settlements. However, what that does mean is you can build a small power base in Araby and then basically go on quests elsewhere. Gather the books, go start sending, building an empire back in the empire or retaking the empire, as long as you've got a couple allies. So if Rapont survives, she's going to be a great ally for the whole game. If you can manage to either get Teclis or Krogar, who's over here, really strong and allied, they will tend to defend the whole area, at which point you can go on your little quests to gather books or set up empires, or little empire base in the rest of the world. It's quite fun. You can also confederate parts of the empire. You have to find the empire, which is really strange. I feel like you should know where they are, considering you just left. But it's not worth sending your starting hero. But if you get a couple extra heroes or some free time, definitely send a hero up there so you could confederate your way back into the empire if you want to. Also, you could get Franz or Elsbeth if the empire is being overrun. So let's look at Volkmar's faction mechanics, and then we'll get into his starting situation. So obviously, Books of Nagash. He does recruit witch hunters and warrior priests at a higher rank. Out of those two, I would say warrior priests are significantly better. The increased recruitment rank does stack with Clergy of Sigmar and other bonuses you can get, meaning you can recruit some very high-level warrior priests from start. I did a campaign, I think I had 6 or 7 Immortal warrior priests by like turn 150. It was really easy to make them immortal, and it was very useful. Now, your Flagellants, Empire Knights, and Free Company Militia gain a bonus versus infantry. Out of those 3 units, the Flagellants are really the only one you're going to want to use a lot of. Free Company Militia is an early game unit. It's not the best at fighting in melee, and Empire Knights are, this does make them better, but still kind of chaff cavalry units. They don't have any great bonuses. They lose to a lot of stuff in melee. They're really only good at killing off spellcasters, artillery, and archers. They don't win in melee combat. It's very frustrating. I hope they get buffed at some point. Now, Volkmar himself is basically, he's an upgraded version of a warrior priest. I forgot the last one. You get a cooldown to your battle prayers and accusations, which is useful with your divine mandate, as well as using witch hunters to weaken enemies. So he's an upgraded version of the warrior priests. He already starts with Grand Hammer of Sigmar. If you don't know how to use battle prayers, you're going to want to look into them and study them, because they're not quite magic, but they kind of are. They buff your units in melee, give them shields, give you basically a magic missile spell, and in fact, for Volkmar, he gets to use them more often, so he should be using them all the time. Unfortunately, you have to get to level 16 to max it out. Now, the rest of Volkmar's trees are fairly standard. He's got the standard blue line. I recommend going down it early on. You do have this Heretic Hunter here, which does purge more corruption, as well as adding a +5 to Warrior Priest on top of the +8 you can get otherwise. Meaning you're looking at 12, 13, 14 level Warrior Priests. It's amazing. Getting Logician is extremely necessary for Volkmar, especially if you want to use Flagellants, because they don't rout, meaning they tend to die. So if they survive a battle, they tend to be very low health. You're going to be recruiting a lot of Flagellants if you want to use them. Quartermaster, really useful. Your economy's not the worst of the Empire Lords, but it's certainly not good for a while until you stabilize your situation. Once you get going, though, the Empire's economy is amazing. You just need time to build up settlements, and that's something in short supply in Arabay at the beginning. You want to get Headhunter almost as soon as you can, because the upgrades make Volkmar's situation much better. Better troops, more movement range, cheaper upkeep, as well as recruitment capacity. All are amazing for the Empire over other factions. The Empire desperately needs them. It just makes you significantly stronger. And if you're using Flagellants, it really helps to be able to recruit them faster. Now, he does have another yellow line up here, which is kind of unusual. He has access to Mere Mortal Men. Your Free Company militias get Blessed Bullets. They have magic armor-piercing projectiles. This makes them a little bit better. It's not amazing, though, because early on, the people you're fighting don't really have armor. Later on, it still makes them semi-useful, but overall, they're fairly useless, in my opinion. Diplomatic relations with the Empire, Kislev, and Southern Rounds is great, except the only you don't know any of them at the start of the game. You have to send someone on a quest to find your homeland. It's a little odd. You also get Frenzy for the free companies. This makes them significantly better at melee until they lose leadership. Sadly, it still doesn't really make them that viable, but early on you could justifiably have a couple of them. The biggest problem here is you get this at rank 12, at which point you should be transitioning away from low-level units to mid-tier units. The next one, you've got War Eternal. This is a significant buff for your flagellants. They have Wayfarer, they accelerate and decelerate much faster into combats, they move faster, and they get a charge bonus. Once you get this, you could use Empire Knights again, but still, free company militia are still not worth using in melee combat. Tools of Absolution. This is very unique for a faction. You get flaming attacks on your entire Lord's army, as well as armor-piercing damage. The Empire does struggle a bit early on to get armor-piercing damage, so this can certainly help. You can get this around rank 14 or 15. I think there are better things to get early game, but it is worth mentioning, if you're fighting vampires, you should have killed off Manfred a long time ago by this point. But if you're back in the Empire fighting Vlad, or you're fighting Khorne, well, Khorne doesn't help as much, or fighting a Nurgle faction, the flaming attacks will help. Armor piercing is quite nice against factions who like armor, like the Khorne one. Sadly, 3 is not game breaking, but it's really nice. Blessed Holy War. Witch Hunters, Warrior Priests, you get more of them, more corruption clear. Hero action, plus 15% chance in the region you're in, makes it quite viable to have a witch hunter running around assassinating enemy lords and heroes or harassing them, which makes it much easier to expand in a very tight area that is Erebay. Finally, Works of God, huge casualty replenishment rate. I think in terms of a single point spent, assuming you've bought the other ones, this might be the single highest casualty replenishment in the game. Or it's right up there. However, you do have to invest several points to it, which kind of lowers the value of it. It's still worth getting. It's very powerful. You also get Strength of the Penitent. If you're fighting in melee combat and you're losing for your entire army, they get physical resistance and melee defense. It's kind of like a version of the Slayer's buff if you've played the Dwarves. It's quite nice. It makes your flagellants significantly stronger. I still don't recommend using an army of nothing but flagellants, but it does help. You also get access to a Warhorse and a War Altar of Sigmar. I am not the biggest fan of the War Altar of Sigmar. In some ways, I find it easier just to have Volkmar on his horse so that he doesn't lose the mobility and he can actually fight. But it's your call. Having the War Altar of Sigmar does give you, well, it's hard to see, but it appears on the left there. You get access to Banishment, which can be quite useful against demonic factions and stuff. You also get Hold the Line. We're snagging early on. It's just a good, cheap, powerful buff to your line infantry. It actually makes your flagellants a lot better. The leadership isn't useful, but they have low melee defense. So having that makes them significantly better at not dying quickly. By the way, they do start with Strength of the Penitent, your flagellants, so you don't get the bonus on that, but your whole army gains that bonus. I said that wrong earlier. I apologize. Now, the other things to note is he has this Face Bastion ability, which is a ward save in the area. It doesn't stack fully well with Grand Shield of Faith, which is your battle prayer, but it basically gives you a second version of it. And then he gets Benediction. And Benediction's quite interesting in the sense that it gives a constant buff to leadership in the area. Your armies, by the point you get this should be one of your last trees you complete. Shouldn't be routing anyway, but again, a leadership buff is always nice. Now, it is worth mentioning the red line here, because if you're going to use flagellants and other melee units early on, getting Empire's Finest, I won't say you should get it first, that you should definitely do blue line, but it could be justifiable to go down this tree rather than getting some of the higher trees. Yellow line tree is good, but the other standard yellow line buffing Volkmar's fighting capacity is not as powerful as getting, say, Empire's Finest on the field. Buffs both your flagellants and all your melee. Later on, if you can get Strength of Hardship, it makes your infantry significantly harder to kill. Rally, stand your ground. Getting both of those, your units should never rout, and your infantry lines should never be broken, especially with Volkmar's buffs to holding a line. It's probably the only Empire faction where you can really slug it out in melee with other factions and have a chance to win, just because Volkmar has so many buffs to melee units. I still recommend doing range units and artillery and stuff rather than just pure melee, but it's much more viable. In terms of Volkmar's starting location, you're here in Sudenburg, midway down Arabe. You're surrounded on all sides by people who may or may not be hostile. Initially, you're fighting some Tomb Kings, and you can easily take Plain of Tuskers, and you want to do that turn 1, turn 2, as soon as possible. That will complete a region, at which point you'll probably want to throw the Growth Edict on the province, because getting to level 3 in Sudenburg and having access to the walls, you already have walls, but it's the garrison building, the increased walls, basic walls, and tall walls. You could do basic walls now, but you'd have to destroy one of your already fairly good buildings. You can't destroy the port, sadly. Tall walls, though, make surviving as this faction very viable. This was one of the, I won't say first, but it was one of my early legendary runs. Was building tall walls. I held out against many armies until I could start pushing them back, especially with how aggressive factions are on legendary mode. Full walls there, you probably don't need an army in that settlement, but if you do, you can smash vampire armies and Tomb King armies galore without needing too many troops in that settlement, which helps because this may be your only settlement and economy for quite some time. This settlement will get taken over and over as the game goes on. You may lose it to vampires, you may lose it to lizardmen, you may lose it to Zeech factions. It's not very defendable, unfortunately. So in Plain of Tusker, don't build anything you're not willing to lose. It does have a port at the beginning, which is nice when you take it, but it does limit you from building an economy building there. The best building I found to build there was a growth building. Build your economy in Sudenburg, not Plain of Tuskers, until you can defend it. Now, once you've taken this area and you've started to build up, you all have a slight problem. The Tomb Kings you're fighting exist over here, but they're also fighting Manfred. So probably about the time you take Plain of Tuskers and build an army to go east, Manfred will take this settlement, Bagar. At which point you have a choice. You can attempt to take the other Tomb King province, at which point Manfred is definitely going to attack you. And if your army is damaged taking the Tomb King settlement, he will wipe you out and you will probably lose the campaign or at least severely struggle. Or you stay back, let him take the Tomb King settlement, and then, assuming he's been damaged, march in and wipe out his army. If you can do that, you can usually push, take Bagar, build up again, and take him out. By turn 20, you should know if you're going to eliminate him quickly or it's a long, drawn-out struggle. You may want to restart if you don't kill him super fast, because Manfred will be a thorn in your side forever. Now, in terms of your surrounding people, the Blackbeard of Nagash is kind of like a passive AI faction. It's really there to not do anything, so they won't really attack you. So don't worry about them. You can take the settlement. It's not worth it. If you do take it, you do get access to this Vault of Nagash. I believe you have access to that, yes. It does add a lot of vampiric corruption, so be ready of it, but it does give big bonuses if you can use it. I've never bothered to do it, usually because the Tomb Kings up here take it, and it's worth, if you can ally Khemri and stay alive up here, it is definitely worth it. He will either kill Rapunzel, Rapunzel will kill him. They tend to hate each other, at which point whoever survives should be your ally. Now, over here, and it's worth mentioning, is the Khorne faction, Skarbrand. He is a major threat early game. He is quite capable of wiping out the Tomb Kings. Usually he doesn't get Rapunzel, but he may charge directly towards you. If he does, you're probably going to want 2 armies to beat his one. His troops, if he's got a full stack, his troops are so good, you're going to need a second army to help you win. Now, to the west here is kind of an interesting mess. You've got the vampire Tomb King faction, the followers of Nagash, who Rapunzel hates, who the Tomb Kings hate, and will fight over this. Now, in the middle is this unique settlement, Great Desert of Arabe. So if you take this, you gain access to this oasis. You get immunity to desert attrition and sandstorm attrition, as well as growth. The problem is you can't really build anything else in that settlement. It's a placeholder settlement rather than a place where you can build an economy. So it is not worth rushing to take out. On the other hand, if Rapunzel is not killing the wizard Caliph's palace, it can be worth rushing over here, and if need be, especially at higher difficulties, kind of abandoning this territory. Obviously, you want to try and hold it if you can, but this is a much safer place to set up a burgeoning empire than right in the smack dab of the brawl that is Middle Arabe. Now, once you've taken over this area, your next threat, surprisingly, is these Lizardmen. I have not managed to get the Lizardmen down here to stay friendly to me. Even though you start off with a non-aggression pact, I find they break it and they invade you. Now, the Lizardmen are actually, in some ways, a bigger threat than the vampires. They're less immediate, but Lizardmen unit are amazingly good in melee combat, so you're not really going to win a melee war against them, meaning you're going to need advanced range or artillery to stop them. Flagellants won't cut it, really. However, if you do beat them, then you can expand into their lands. The downside of that is there's Teclis and one of the Zeech factions duking it out in this area. I tend to find Teclis loses most games. If he wins, it's much easier. If he loses, you're going to be fighting Zeech factions flooding up from the north. To the far east is another Lizardman faction. If you can kill off Tic-Tac-Toe from Tel Aqua over here early, it is possible you can get over here and become friends with Krogar. I think it might be Krogar, but I could be wrong. The Last Defender faction. If you can become friends with him, he's a good person to leave alive because he'll become friends with Teclis. He'll hold this coastal area. Now, the downside is if you find him before you kill off Tic-Tac-Toe and Tel Aqua, you're definitely going to be looking at a war. He has good land, but you're probably not going to be able to take him out very quickly because of other enemies encroaching on your position. There is a great settlement right in here. I can't remember which side it's on. If you take it, fortify it, leave a lord with a half stack there, you can stop basically any crossing of the mountains for a very long distance. They have to go far north, far south, then you can build up. Now, there is this Heart of the Jungle, which is a wood elf settlement there. 50-50 chance they attack you, 50-50 chance they just want to be left alone. If you can, leave them alive and leave them alone, and they will hold that area for you on their own. If they do declare war, it's very easy to march in and take their settlement. I have a huge disagreement with how magical forests are done in this game, and the biggest one is it has attrition, some places like Athaloran, but if you can march to the settlement on the first turn and take them out, there's really no power of a magical forest. This is a textbook example of it. You can usually march from this settlement to here, one turn, take it, wipe them out, at which point you've got a settlement that is a struggle to hold, but it is another province. You're not going to be able to build it up, but at least no one else will own the territory. Anyway, after that, you've got your choices where to go. Kind of migrate, set up outposts elsewhere in the world, hunt the books of Nagash, or just conquer things. It's really your choice. Depending on how many good factions survive or die, you may have a huge empire, you may have a small one. Don't pick fights with the other good factions. It's not worth it. There are plenty of other places in the world you can migrate to, including Lustria, back to the Empire, where there's other foes to fight. Don't pick more fights than you need to. Of course, at higher difficulties, you got to be more wary. The best empire I found to come up with was take everything on this side of the mountain range and kind of ignore everything on this side or up here. Draw a line right up here, fortify across this area. This is a huge marsh that slows people down. Everything south of that, you can build a new empire, and you can easily be number 1 or 2 in the world in strength and have a very defendable heartland. Anyway, that is it for Volkmar the Grim. He's quite fun. His start is rough, but if you survive, it's still rough for a long time. But once you win and take over Arabe, it's very defendable, unlike other areas, because you've got a giant ocean on one side. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, that great stuff. Check out the rest of the series, other videos. I do plenty of games on the channel. And I hope to see you all in another guide, a let's play, or even a stream sometime. Bye for now.